podcast listeners. I don't know why. All right. Hey, podcast listeners, it's Rhea Wong with you once again with Nonprofit Down. I am so stoked because today I'm talking to my buddy, my homegirl, Rachel Bearbower. She is El Queso Grande, the head cheese, the big head honcho, the presidente of small shop strategies. And today we're going to talk all about, guess what? Small shop strategies. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Hello, it is so good to be here and be hanging out with you. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, this is gonna be fun. So before we jump into all the deets, which I know everyone is getting their notebooks out, or if you haven't, get your notebooks out because she's gonna drop some value bombs. What's your personal story? Like, how did you get to this point of wanting to help small shops thrive? Because I know you and I have very similar stories of being recovering EDs.
Yeah, definitely a recovering ED. I think you're in that club for life. But I actually was on a track to be in finance. I worked in Boston. I was in finance. I was studying to take my Series 7. Like I was going to be a financial advisor, wear my power suit. It's going to be great. And I quit my job in a meeting and didn't have a plan. So I ended up moving back to my hometown. And in the midst of all of that, I had found an organization. I was like, this nonprofit thing is kind of cool. I like to help people. And I said like those famous last words of, is it really that hard to start a nonprofit? And so then I did. Like,
Be
so
careful what you ask for.
literally no, I mean like sweet baby ed Rachel, who had like no idea what she was getting herself into, and just like, you're in your 20s and you're so overconfident. So obviously it's a very hard role, and I learned that very quickly. But
Wait, have you ever heard of the Kruger-Dunning effect?
no.
Oh, there's this phenomenon called the Kruger-Dunning effect. I think that's what it's called, where basically you are so overly confident because you just have no idea what you did, like the depth of your incompetence and lack of knowledge. So you're like, yeah, how are you? And then you
Oh
find out there's
yeah, so
actually a name
okay,
for it.
if we look that up on Wikipedia, my face is there. That is like what, yeah. So but yeah, but like through that, I really just took like all the pieces of my life that I ran my organization on instinct, which I definitely don't recommend, but I didn't suck at it. And I really just tried all these different things, and I was just so committed. I was like, okay, let's do this. And so once you kind of go through this process, then like the best way to like transfer that knowledge, I'm a big believer of like teach everything that you know. And so I'm teaching what I know, which is small shops and how hard it is and the strategies to make it easier. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I talk about this all the time. My first day on the job as a 26-year-old ED, I did two Google searches. Google search one was, what does an ED do? Google search two was, how do you fundraise? So unfortunately, our sector is one where people learn trial by fire. It's very much sink
yes.
or swim. Okay, let's get into it. So when you say small shop, what do you mean? Because I know there are different definitions of what small is. I actually spoke to someone the other day at a $5 million org. They're like, we're pretty small. And I was like, relative to what? Like relative to like UNICEF, sure. So what do you mean by small shop?
Okay, so I Rachel from Small Shop Strategies, I define a small shop as under 3 million in revenue and typically less than 10 employees. Now, let me there's a asterisk to that. Really where I find myself and the organizations that I am working with are typically in the 250,000 to like 750,000 to a million kind of operating budget. And then usually there's 1 to 2 person shops, or, 3, 4, like, so kind of under that 1 million is really where I seem to find myself working with most small shops.
What's interesting is, I mean, you and I serve very similar type folks, and one thing that I've noticed, and I just wonder if you've noticed it as well, is that organizations that tend to be bigger, let's say the seven figures, but are predominantly federal grant or state grant funded, realistically in an organizational sense are much younger, even though their budgets are much bigger. Do you find that?
Yeah, I think I, I think it's also a mindset. I have had
Say it,
organ
girl.
I mean, I've had organizations that are $50,000 in revenue who have invested $20,000 in services to learn and grow and scale. And then I've had $1 million organizations be like, so this is $97. What am I going to get? So okay, I have 100-pound husky, and he truly believes that he is a lapdog. Like, he is committed to that role. He's 100 pounds. He is huge. He is not a lapdog. He does not know that. And I think that that goes with organizations. Like, if you believe in what you're doing and you're like, you can see the investment, then like you're going to invest. But if you're like so in that scarcity mindset, then like you're like, ooh, $97, not in the budget.
I'm so glad that you said that because I 110 million% agree. Uh, I didn't really see real growth in my nonprofit until I invested in my own skills. I spent probably like
Absolutely.
$20,000 in professional development to learn how to fundraise properly, to learn how to do accounting, you have to invest in the brain if you want to grow. And so I could not underscore that more. And if you're the kind of leader who is sweating $97 for something that could potentially bring in 10, 100 times that, then I think you as a leader really need to reset your mind as to what your priorities truly are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to look at that. You have to look at what that investment is going to do. I think about this with like organizations sending emails. I literally was just talking to an organization who was like, yeah, we're really nervous about sending emails because, we don't want to over email people, yada yada yada. We've all heard this. And the thing is though, they're sending like maybe an email a month. And I was like, oh no, 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 no. Like, you don't get what you want unless you ask for it and you invest in it and you put time and energy and do the reps. Like, and that's how organizations grow. And so when I was saying like how I define a small shop, like typically my organizations start in that like $250,000 range. But I have several organizations that have been with me for a while that are now like skyrocketing because they've been investing in themselves.
Oh, so important. So in my fundraising accelerator, which is not an inexpensive program, but I know the people who are ready to invest are the ones who are going to do the work. And so the ones who do the work regularly see 6 and 7 figures get added to their bottom line budget because, to your point, like there's some experimentation, but you have to be willing to try stuff and do the work over and over and over, consistently showing up.
I said I was talking to somebody about this idea that, like when people or organizations are funded, we typically fund, like, you get a grant or something, we fund for like a year. The number of mistakes that I have made just this year or in the last 12 months alone, like, we aren't setting up our sector in a way to allow for organizations to make mistakes, to try new things, to do like to experiment. They feel like right out of the gate they have to be perfect because every single dollar is the last dollar they're going to get, where it's like, let's fund them for 5 years so that they can make a whole lot of mistakes and make a lot of good at the same time.
You are preaching to the choir, friend. I think if we actually had a philanthropic sector that took the idea of more kind of a venture philanthropy approach, which is we're going to invest and we're going to invest in the jockey, not the horse, and we're going to invest multi-year so that you can try some stuff. Because the thing is, if we're on this 12-month turnaround, you're not going to try stuff because you're like, my funding might be at risk. So you don't take any risks, you don't get the big rewards. Anyway, that is a whole other podcast, but yes,
Yes.
last thing I'll say though is I think that's why nonprofits really have to look at major donor giving, individual unrestricted giving, to give themselves a little bit of that runway to experiment and to grow and to test out new ideas. So,
And I think it's an opportunity to have conversations with some really cool donors to say, like, listen, here's the goal. I don't have every single answer because there's not a blueprint for how to solve this problem. And you find the right donor, the right major donor, right individual donors that believe in that, like, figure it out mentality, like, you got it made. But you also have to be upfront and honest of, like, this is what we're trying to solve, but we don't quite have like a straight and narrow path. Like, this path is going to be a little windy.
yeah. Well, and I think there's also the opportunity too to engage people as thought partners. So let's say you're talking to somebody who is an entrepreneur and you're like, hey, we don't know how to do this thing exactly, but we're going to try a bunch of stuff. Any entrepreneurial person will jump at the chance to help you think through it, right? Like that's fun for them. Entrepreneurs like to solve problems.
Absolutely. And the answer's always in the room. So
Yeah.
that, like, entrepreneurial minded donor might have some really great ideas of things that you can do, or believe in investing in your infrastructure, in your systems, in your, like, the foundation of your organization, because they know how important that is in their business or in businesses that they work with.
Okay, let's jump into it because this is a nice segue. So the one mistake, I mean, I make many mistakes, but one of the biggest mistakes I think I made as I was growing is I'm not by nature a process person. I'm not, a check the box, I get stuff done. It's all in my head. I have my own organizational system. I'm not really great at documentation, workflows, organizing my Dropbox, which was a disaster. So tell me a little bit about the role of organization, processes, workflows, etc., on the back end if you're thinking about growth.
Okay, I'm gonna, like, drop a huge revelation here. I'm not that organized or, like, process oriented or, like, have everything, like, neat and tidy either. And I'm with you. Like, so that was a big mistake I made as an ED, is I kept so much in my head. I felt like even when I was trying to, like, pass something off or delegate, and I still find myself doing this, is I have it all in my head and I feel like I have to, like, create this beautiful package of, like, I have to, like, create the SOP and all these lists and, like, give the Loom video to pass something off. Yet I have very talented and smart people who are smarter than me, who I just need to be like, I need you to do this thing, and they're going to figure it out. So when it comes to your back end, there does need to be some sort of structure, some sort of system. And I say this again, my asterisk, it it is going to look different for everyone, because everyone works different. Everyone, like, thinks different, has different skill sets, has different zones of genius, and are going to be comfortable in a different way. Okay. So that is, like, let's just kind of put that, like, over the top of this entire conversation. What works for me might not work for you, but having something is going to make you more successful. So kind of going back to your, like, what does the back end look like? I have 4 systems that you got to have. Okay. So we've got your operational system. Okay. So that is, like, I don't know, that's like your Google Drive, your Dropbox, your, like, the place where you store all the things. It's got to be in one place. Okay. Then you have project management, your project management system. That system is how you get stuff done and you move through your workflows. So whether that is, like, how do you approach a new donor? How do you launch a year-end campaign? How do you set up an event? That's where all those processes live. Okay. So then we have your calendar management system. That is, that's, like, very time based. That's where your scheduling meetings. That's where you are kind of divvying up your time. So those three systems, yes, I still said four, your operations, your project management, and your calendar management, those are all tech-based, okay? So there is tech to accompany you. We have one more, and that is your executive function. That is how you get you, the human, behind the work to get the shit done. Because at the end of the day, you can have all these systems. You can have a beautiful like project management system with like color coding. But if you, the human, can't get it done or go in there and figure out your systems, it's never going to get done. So we got to figure out how to get these like tech and analog systems to like work in harmony.
And it's so funny you said that because I would go through these phases where I was like, oh, I'm going to get super organized, right? I would spend like hours setting up like a beautiful system. It wasn't even Notion at the time. I forgot what anyway, like I've tried them all. Asana, Trello, Evernote, right? And I was like, yes, like I just read, you know, getting things done with David Allen. I'm going to set up my whole system. And then like in, 2 weeks, basically, I was back to the old way. So the human element
Bravo for
is,
making it 2 weeks. So,
oh my
well
God.
done
Well,
on
no,
that.
I would get like super psyched. I was like, yes, I'm going to tag everything. It's going to be like amazing. Yeah, best laid plans. So, but how do you get the human? Because, basically you're fighting against inertia, you're fighting against habit. And for someone, well,
Yep.
I would assume for all of us, but for someone like myself, it's like so easy to just go back to the thing that I'm used to doing.
Totally. And I think there's value in both. Like there's this technology that's out there to like make our life better, to make things easier, to like help us track our time. So technology can be a huge asset. And then but there's habits and this analog system that you have to figure out for yourself that works for you. And then figuring out how to like find synergy between the two of them. And so the I'll just kind of give you what I do. I am very much a hand like pen to paper type of person. Like I got to write something down. For those of you out there who are also my analog friends who like have your paper calendar, have your to-do list, that's okay. It's actually great because I remember when I learned this stat, but you are 40% more likely to complete a task when you write it down. So trying to go all digital, that is not the solution because we're not actually robots. I mean, not yet, but like, so like having your pen and paper is totally okay. I have this thing I call the sun up and sundown routine for all the listeners out there who don't know. I'm a new farmer. I live on a farm and seasons are my jam. Like we also very much grow like legit like grow stuff, and so sun up, sun down, like it's my jam. Okay, sun up routine. You sit down at your desk, and I'm not talking you need to get up at 5 a.m. You do your journaling. Like if that's your vibe, like go for it. What this process is sitting when you sit down at your desk, you open up the systems, operations, calendar, and project management systems, and you take a look at your day. Like, what does that look like? What am I doing? And you take that and you download it onto your to-do list, onto your paper. Okay. Then you work from that paper. And then at the end of the day, your sundown routine is transferring that knowledge, transferring all the notes, all the post-it notes that you have, all the notes that you have in your notebook back into those systems. Because especially when you work with teams, your team's got to know like what you did every day or like the donors that you called. And so by having those like a simple sun up and sundown routine so that you're like downloading the information and then uploading the information at the end of the day, that is how you can start to make this analog and tech operational systems start to work together.
Rachel, I love that. And it sounds so simple and easy to do. And really, it's just about habit forming, right? Like it's just get into the habit of
Yeah.
doing it. All right, let me switch tacks because this is the number one question I get, especially with small shops. Ria, I really want to be spending more of my time fundraising, and I'm talking primarily about EDs. I just don't have the time and I don't have a development staff, which I imagine is true for 99% of the small shops you work with.
Yep.
What do we do about that?
Well, you got to make the time. So, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing during the day? You gotta, I mean, take a look at that. And so Rhea and I are definitely both like obsessed with a book called 10x is easier than 2x. So like, woohoo.
It's my Bible. I love it so much.
It's
Everyone should read it. Yeah, I love it.
But okay, there's a couple of themes that like I in reading that like have really like risen to the top for me, especially when it comes to EDs. And it's focusing on the top 20% that is going to move the needle. When you, okay, like think of like the Eisenhower matrix. If you don't know what the Eisenhower matrix is, Google it. It basically is a way to prioritize what you're doing. Okay. So taking every single thing that you are doing and putting that into the Eisenhower matrix or prioritizing it, like, and if you are like, oh, everything's a priority, well, it's not. And now start breaking that list down into like, what is going to move the needle in my organization? Meaning, what is something that I need to, like, maybe it's like setting up your like an email workflow so that as you're bringing all these donors in, they feel super nurtured, because we also know that you can't have these like one-on-one relationships with all of our donors. So maybe it's investing time in building a system so that when people come into your sphere, they feel nurtured. It gives you a hot minute to like, okay, they're in, they're getting emails, they're like, we know that they're alive. Cool. I can like take a minute before I call them or whatever. And so taking a look at that, what is going to move the needle, focusing on that like top 20%. And then the other thing that is really resonating with that idea of like 10x is easier than 2x is who, not how. And this is the thing that small nonprofits are not thinking about. They have executive directors who are trying to do all the things, and you can't be an expert at everything, nor should you. And so if you need to spend more time fundraising, but you're so busy doing XYZ, who are the people, who are the volunteers, who are the board members that you can say, okay, board member, you're doing X, volunteer, you're doing Y. And hey, consultant who's really good at this really specific thing, I'm going to pay you to do Z and get it done quickly, get it done right, get it done the first time, and make my life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Ugh, double click on all the things. Wait, okay, let's talk about the thing. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts, but time and time again, because I work with primarily EDs who are major gift focused, when they're not getting enough prospects in the door, when they're not raising the money they need to raise, a lot of times their response is, well, we'll just hire a development director. So, talk to me about why that might be a flawed strategy and what you need to consider before hiring a development director.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got to go back to like, why isn't this working for you? You know, like, why, like, do you not have enough time? Do you have too many donors? Are you not building like individual relationships? Are your donors all over the country? And so to go meet with donors, you have to get on an airplane, and that takes up a ton of time. Like, what is the thing that like is missing from the equation for you? And instead of immediately going to like, well, I've got to hire someone, like, do you? And is it a development person? Or is it a database person? Or is it somebody who can schedule all of your appointments for you? Like, getting really specific into what is taking up the most amount of your time. And again, that goes back to knowing what you're doing, to realizing what the top 20% is so you can focus on that. But instead of just hiring another I know there's a lot of development people who listen to this, so please know that like I think you humans are like the most amazing people, but like sometimes our development people are forced to be these jack of all trades as well. And we aren't letting our development directors go and do the thing they need to do because they have to do a whole bunch of other crap. So
Yes,
before
yes,
people
yes. I mean, okay, yeah. Wait, let's pause on this because I have feelings about it, which is
tell
if
me your
you
feelings.
my feelings, we alluded to this before we started recording, which is when you throw a development person, which by the way, development directors are expensive, right? So like that's huge FTE numbers, plus benefits, right? So we're talking six figures. If you're throwing an FTE at a problem when you actually haven't taken a look at what the problem is, like maybe the problem is your database isn't up to snuff. Maybe your contact information is all over the place. Maybe you don't have a strategy for retaining donors. I find that's a big thing, right? Maybe you have an ED who actually does not want to or know how to fundraise, right? So you maybe your board isn't engaged in fund. Like there are so many potential things that you can do to diagnose the problem first before throwing a, a head count, like throwing head count at it. And the other thing is, I want to say to your point, if you go through the trouble of hiring someone without cleaning house first, essentially they become a very highly paid admin. Like you don't want them to be spending time cleaning your database. What you want them to be doing is out there talking to donors and getting more donors in the door, but they can't do that if the house is dirty. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I have feelings about that.
Your feelings are valid, and it's essential that we okay, I imagine there's a lot of people listening who are like, cool, Rachel and Ria, we don't have the money to hire anyone, and I've got to do the thing. So I get that. I've been in that position. I think where like when I started teaching what I knew was because I was really good at figuring out systems to maximize my time for the most like bang for my buck. Now, there is there's always an ideal world scenario. Okay. Ideal world scenario is you have the 10 most perfect donors that like you can just nurture and you can take out to coffee, you can text with them. They give money when they say they're going to give money. They give the exact amount you need to cover all of your operating costs plus some.
I want
Okay,
to live in
we
that
don't
world, Rachel.
I do too. I really do. And we do not live in that world. Actually, if you are an organization that lives in that world, please, I want to know what it's like.
Call us. Yeah, we want to know.
Call us. We don't live in that world, and that's okay. What is important to start thinking about is okay, I can focus on these 10 donors. Now, I think it's also important to prioritize your donors because the top 10 aren't necessarily the top like givers. They might be, but they aren't necessarily. But figure out your 10. Okay. The rest of your donors, the individual givers, the ones that like are giving monthly, we have tech and we have automation and we have systems out there to help support you to have to to be able to nurture those relationships without having those one-to-one interactions or those one-to-one relationships because that's just not possible. But you also probably have, you know, however many donors that you still need to connect with. And so part of being a really good fundraiser is looking at the whole picture and what systems can I put in place. I tell EDs that I'm like, I have a membership. I have a group of small shop EDs called Sprouted, super fun. So we talk about this stuff a lot. But I say, like, my goal is to help you get from point A to point B as quickly, as efficiently as possible. Once you get that like foundation down, build on that, optimize that, but start with figuring out one system. If that is automating the receipt letter and then sending a second email when somebody gives a gift, great. Focus on that, start there. You can optimize that later. But being able to go and fundraise, think about the top, your top 20%, but don't completely forget about the 80%. Set up systems that make your life easier for that 80%.
Yeah, two things that occurred to me as you were talking is number one, I want every ED out there to really think about the word upgrade, right? You're upgrading. So you're upgrading your
Yes,
board
yes, yes.
constantly, you're upgrading your staff, you're upgrading your systems, you're upgrading your own brain. And it's a constant, right? Because what got you there, what got you here won't get you there, right? And so as leaders, we constantly need to be thinking about the top 10%, not just the top 10% donors, our top 10% board members, our top 10% staff performers, our top 10% tech that we're using, and constantly like cutting the bottom and upgrading to the top, right? So that's, and I think when you're so in the weeds, it's hard to get that 360 view, but you have to make the time to do it. And then the second thing that you said, flew out of my mind. It may come back to me. Hold on. Something about upgrading and it'll come back to me. But you know, it's all about continuously up. Well, I remember. So I was reading about
I knew it'd come
how,
back to you.
yeah, came back to me. So I was reading this great book called The Nuclear Effect, and he was talking about billionaires. And he's like, a lot of billionaires have built their money on the back of something really boring. Right. And so I think as EDs, we're constantly trying to like, oh, what's the new idea? I'm going to throw spaghetti at the wall, especially if you're a founder. You have that visionary entrepreneurial energy. I have it too. I have new
Yep.
shiny object syndrome. It's bad. But you just have to consistently show up and do the boring work over and over and over again. You got to get the reps in order to know how to optimize. Because if you're changing the system or changing the way that you do whatever every 5 seconds, you're never going to get a sense of what's actually working because you're just constantly trying new things. So I think there's a place for innovation, but I think you also have to be really disciplined to continuously, consistently do the thing over and over again.
Yes. It's, I mean, James Clear, who says, like, you are the sum of all of your daily habits. Like, I mean, if we're talking about like doing the reps, like, let's go to a basketball metaphor. If you want to get good at free throws, then you got to like be doing those free throws all the time. Now, I was terrible at basketball, so I didn't practice those. So I played basketball once in fourth grade and quit. But then, we still had that basketball hoop. And when I was able to start driving, I set up my basketball hoop with a cone and I learned how to parallel park. And I practiced parallel parking like it was my job. And you know what? I can parallel park literally anywhere with a crowd of people in front of me, no problem, tight space. I got this.
Oh, you're my
But
hero. I want to
so
buy a car
here,
that parallel parks itself because I can't. I can't.
oh, it like it makes my heart happy. But like here's the other like thing that we don't talk about. Like we invest all of this time. Okay, so I could have invested all my time in practicing like doing free throws. And then at a certain point, I'm like, you know what? I don't like basketball. It's not my favorite thing. Yeah, I've invested a lot of time, but you know what? I'm moving on. And I think sometimes in our organizations, we're like, oh, we just invested so much time and energy and everything into this. And we get that. I know there's like a definition for it. Like
Sunk
we
costs. Yeah,
yes, thank you. Like
yeah
we're
we
like,
we
oh, I
chase the
can't walk
sunk
away.
cost. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
like I
And
already threw so much money at it. I can't give up on it. But then at some point, you're just throwing good money after bad.
exactly. And so that goes for, that board member that sucks. Like, yeah, they've been here, they're still here. Maybe it's time to have a conversation to ask them to leave because they are not actually adding any value. Maybe it's upgrading your donor management system because you have been on the free version and you have outgrown that and it is time to upgrade. But it's scary to upgrade because you have so much information in there. But by upgrading, you're going to get so much more benefit. So it's being able to walk away from something, even though it's scary, knowing that there is a better end result out there.
So good, and that's so 10x is easier than 2x, which you have to let go of the things that are keeping you in the 2x world, right? And a lot of times that's the 80% of the stuff that you've been doing that's gotten you to this point. But if you want 10x growth, 10x mindset, you have to let go of the stuff that is not contributing to your 10x.
So I want to go back to the question about like what are some things that the fundraisers can do, because or like somebody who needs to be fundraising, because you can create, like you can create all these systems, you can have all this great stuff, but like at the end of the day, it's picking up the phone, it's meeting with donors, it's cold calling, it's just doing the damn thing. There's not a silver bullet. It's the consistent reps over and over and over that are going to get you the result that you want. It's before you open your email, you send 3 Loom videos every single day. You write a thank you note. You send an article to a board member that you saw that reminded you. Like, it's those little things, like building in those habits that are going to help you raise that $1 million or get you to 2 million or get you to 5 million, whatever that is. But it's deciding, like, it's committing to, like, this is my vision. Everything I do from here on out is in service to the vision. And let me tell you the most beautiful thing. When you are super, super clear on your goals, you're super clear on what your focus is, it is so much easier to say no.
I love that. I've been thinking a lot about the notion of decide and commit. So decide, the side comes from the Latin root for death. It's like homicide, suicide, right? To decide means to put to death all other options. So when you decide,
Ooh.
you put to death all other options and then you commit. Because so often when things are not going the way that we want, it's because we haven't fully committed to it, right? We're like, well, then I'm going to hedge and I'm also going to do a bunch of other stuff on the side. And blah, blah. Decide and commit. That's how you get to growth. Wait, I want to talk about reps too, because I think the thing that I see a lot of with the folks I work with is that they're very reluctant to pick up the phone and talk to people because they're afraid of screwing up. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing. Here's the thing. At some point, you will screw it up. Like at some point, you will say the wrong thing, right? But you pick up and you keep it moving and you keep going. And if it's really something that you want to get better at, there are ways to do it. You can role play with your board. You can ask for feedback. You can role play with your staff, right? So again, it's just the reps. Like people wonder how to become a better fundraiser. There's no secret bullet, right? Like no one's necessarily born being a natural fundraiser. You just have to practice doing it. You have to practice getting the nose, right? Your
Yeah.
skin thickens up a little bit, and it's just a math problem. Like the more asks you put out, the more no's you're going to get, but the more yeses you're going to get. So if you
I
put
mean,
out a lot of asks, you're going to get a lot of more yeses.
our brains naturally go towards like the negative. So like you might have 10 yeses and 1 no, 9 yeses, 1 no, math hard. But like those, like we focus then on that one instead of focusing on the other 9 that you're like, heck yeah, I got
Yeah.
those 9. And so, okay, I have done a lot of fundraising over the last 20 years. I'm also not necessarily the one who is fundraising. So like I've done a lot of it, but I haven't ever been like the in-house fundraiser, like doing, like that's my sole job. So I've had a lot of opportunities to really suck at fundraising. And like those times that, I mean, I will never forget. I called a donor and like I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew I needed to call them. And they're one of those donors that like literally never picks up. And then they picked up, and then I didn't know, like I was at a loss for words. And then I just started laughing. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were going to pick up. And on the other end, she's like, oh, I know, I never pick up. I just knew, I felt so bad. And like, it ended up being like, I was so incredibly awkward. And then she was like, oh, this is kind of funny. And then we had a great conversation. And then she gave again. And I was like, oh, hey, okay. So like somebody likes my awkward energy. This is great. And Okay, I'm gonna tell you the first time that I got like my first like 5-figure gift. Okay, like I was a baby ED. I was just starting my organization, and I had steward the stoner from like 10 or from $500 to $5,000, and he was gonna give $10,000, and like it came from a foundation, and so I was just like waiting for that call. I knew it was coming. I was at a coffee shop when the call came in, and he's like, "Hey, 10,000 is not going to happen this year." And I was like, oh no. I had spent the money. I was crushed. And then he's like, we're going to give you 20,000. And I was like, first, like devastated. And then I was elated. And this is all happening in a matter of seconds with like, the coffee shop happening behind me. And my response to his very generous gift was, holy shit. That that is how I accepted my very first 5-figure gift. So you know, it just takes some practice,
Yeah.
and you're still gonna screw it up. And like also just be yourself. I think for me, like I've been successful because like I kind of just am who I am, and like I screw
Yeah.
up, and I kind of just like, well, that was weird. So, we move forward. And people kind of find that endearing because when you're super buttoned up or you're like very professional, they're a little like, oh, I don't quite know how to respond to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, it's so true. In fact, I remember, the first couple of times I went on foundation visits, and I was 26 years old. I didn't know what I was doing, right? I didn't know that you had to have like a formal presentation and like the packets. I just showed up and I was like,
yeah,
"Hi."
well,
This is and actually I
here
think it
I
really
am.
worked in my favor because they were like, "Look at this poor clueless girl. Like, we're gonna
And
help
yet
her."
she's trying super hard.
She's
And
trying hard and she's got some moxie and we appreciate that. So I'm not saying go in unprepared, but go in with a sense of authenticity of like, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what but I'm also like super clear in what I'm trying to achieve. And I want to invite you on this journey with me.
absolutely, that goes back to just knowing exactly what you're going after, and being committed to raising what you're going to raise, solving the problem that you're going to solve, and having some like stories, and having just those like antidotes. Antidotes, that's not the right word. Kind of
Anecdotes.
those, thank you. To like just say like, yeah, this is why this is important. So absolutely go in prepared, but also go in as yourself, because people are going to like you. And I guess maybe they won't, but they
It
are
is
going
what
to
it is.
have, it is what it is, and they're going to have a better response by you just being who you are instead of trying to be something that you're not.
Well, and I also just want to underscore here that so often when we go into asks and it doesn't go the way that we want, or the meeting, like we whiff the meeting or like whatever it is, there's such a strong tendency to tell ourselves a story about what that meant about me, right? It's really about
Mm-hmm.
your internal narrative, like, oh, if they didn't like me, it's because you know, I'm not doing a good job, or like they have unconscious bias, or blah, blah, blah. Like there's a tendency to really catastrophize and tell yourself all sorts of crazy stories and make yourself feel bad. So use your big, beautiful brain to not torture yourself. I always love the phrase,
Yeah.
pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Don't suffer. Like, not everyone is going to be your person. Not everyone is going to say yes to you. Don't make it about you. Don't make it about something that you're doing wrong or that is missing or insufficient in you. Take what it is, take the learning, right? We can always learn,
And
but don't internalize it. And I feel like so often the reason why fundraisers burn out is they just internalize all this stuff and they make it mean something about who they are as people or their worth as a human being. And I'm like, calm down.
well, and there's also this idea that you are like, you're like, you're the only thing in their world. Like, I, we get really caught up. I'll go back to my like email example, like we get caught up that like, oh, I don't want to over email people because like they're busy. Like, yeah, people are busy. So like the more emails that you send, the more that you're staying top of mind. Like I don't open every single email, but like I saw the name pop up and like it kept me like, ooh, I wonder what they're up to, or ooh, I need to go back and read that email. Like you can stay top of mind. Like send like somebody might be like, you know, ordering Starbucks when you call and they're like, ooh, gotta call them back, but ooh, I gotta get my iced coffee. And then they drive off from the drive-through and like, don't have a chance to call you back. Like, not because they don't love you, it's because they were getting their iced coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. Be careful about the stories you're telling. All right, wait. Last question for me, because we could go on forever and ever.
Yes.
Let's talk about boards. Because do you
Ooh.
think that there's a way that small shops use boards differently than bigger shops? And if so, how?
So I think small shops use their boards as like committee members. And especially when you are kind of in that grassroots phase, you're starting out, you're building up, like your board members are very much a working board. And I think when an ED who is really looking to grow and scale really needs to know when that needs to shift. And sometimes that shift is really hard. And sometimes that also means that the board members that have been on your board as a working board are no longer the right board members to be on your board to become more of a governing board or a fundraising board or whatever goal you're trying to do. And so it's also, I think, we just kind of use them to like do the thing we need them to do to like, hey, I have too many thank you notes to write. Can you write some thank you notes? Like, yeah, that's a great job for a board member. But also, like, what is your board member's superpower? What are they really good at? You know, they they might I had a board member who, like, bless her heart, like every time like I would use my board when I was baby ED, we would like stuff all of the envelopes for our appeal. And I had a board member who like could not fold. Like, and she couldn't fold in the way, like she couldn't do the Z, like she was like, this is not, I cannot do this. She was an Excel wizard. And so I was like, cool, you're going to be over here managing the data, and I'm not going to make you fold. And so, really thinking about like, what are your learning your donor superpowers and leveraging that and equipping them with what they need to feel most comfortable to go out and fundraise, to make introductions, to make an ask, to do what they need to do.
Yeah. Well, and I
But
will say that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, but I think the biggest thing with small boards is to know when it's time, or not small boards, but smaller organizations, is to know when it's time to shift from that working board to more of a fundraising governing, like shifting that
And
kind of
what are the
mindset.
signs? How do we know when?
What are some signs? I think it's when I used to treat, okay, I'm going to go to like committees. Like I used to treat my committees as positions that like future positions. So I had a development committee because I eventually wanted a development person. I had a program committee because I wanted a program person. Okay, so then if my board was spending more time wanting to be in the weeds of these like committees, then that was a big sign of like, okay, they're more of a doer than they are of a like kind of thinking big picture. um that is such a good question, and I'm not sure I know like exactly, like I because I'm such like a woo person, I would be like, it's a gut feeling. I'm sure there's some signs. um but I think it's when like you kind of hit like a certain threshold of you're able to start um investing in the people who can do the
Hmm.
work that the board was originally doing. That's
Yeah.
probably the biggest indication.
Yeah, I think that that's right. It's for me, it's that. And then it's also, are you bringing in the money that you need, right? Because working
Yeah.
board, like when I hear people say like, well, I have more of a working board, to me, that
That
just
means they're
means that
not
they're not
fundraising.
fundraising. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, so I don't know what they're doing, but they're not fundraising, right? And so if you need more networks, if you need introductions to foundations, if you need that higher level of connection in order to get the resources in the door, that to me is a clear sign that you need to start upgrading the board. The other thing is and I can't underscore this enough, before you go on a big donor acquisition kick, make sure you plug your leaky bucket. Look at
Oh
your
my
donor
gosh.
retention.
Yes.
So if you're not retaining your donors at least 70% year over year, you got some problems on your retention end. Fix that before you go find a bunch of new donors. And I find 9 times out of 10, the reason why people are like, I need more donor prospects, it's because you burned all of the ones that you've had.
There's like, okay, think about when you, so I have a donor roadmap that I created that basically like lays out like here's kind of a timeline of like when you acquire a new donor and like here are the things to do. But the most important piece of that is when a donor, we spend so much time in the acquisition and we don't spend time in the retention. And it starts when that donor hits the donate button. What's going through their mind is like, and this is just before they hit that donate button. This is awesome. Like they have dopamine. They are like so excited. They're like, yes, this is awesome. They hit that donate button and the buyer's remorse comes in, the doubt and the dread and the fear, because they don't know if the gift that they just made, if you receive it, they don't know if you're going to do what you said you were going to do with it. There's just all this doubt starts to come in. On the organization side, we see that gift come in and we're like celebrating. We're like, this is awesome. This is great. We like check the box. We got a new donor. Fantastic. So the organization's job is to meet the donor where they're at when they make that first gift. Like get quickly, get them a thank you. And I'm putting like the permission slip out here to every organization who is like, oh, I have to write, I have to handwrite my thank you note. Speed is what is important. Shoot a text to that person. Send a quick email. If you can't get a handwritten thank you note out in like the in like 24 hours, which like who has the time for that? That's okay. Go for speed, set up that system, and then on Fridays, write all your thank you notes, get them in the mail. So don't be like that. Donor retention starts with that first moment, and it's less about, this sounds terrible, it's less about the quality. It's so important to be quality, but it's a lot about the speed and meeting that donor where they're at with their excitement and being excited that they're now part of your community.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Because you're so right. The minute you hit the donate button, you're like, oh no, was that a bad
One
idea?
second.
Right. Right.
Did
And
they
it's
get that?
different than going to like Whole Foods and handing over $20 for a peanut. Because you're like, I got the peanut.
It's a great
So like,
peanut.
right. It's Whole Foods. So it's like one peanut, but at least I have the peanut. And so, and as humans, we're not very good at delayed gratification. So you want to get that gratification in ASAP. Okay, last question. I know I keep saying last question, but like really legit last question. In your opinion, I have an opinion, but in your opinion, for a small shop, ED, what percentage of their time should they be spending on fundraising?
Are we talking about the ED? Are we talking about like
Yeah, the ED.
ED? I
Let's say of a
mean,
sub 1 million org.
60, 70%. Like it's
Yes.
it's
I was like,
it's gotta
mhm.
be the bulk of your time.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
and that can be done if you're a systems thinker and set up systems to like take your mind off of like, ooh, did I get that email out? Ooh, did I create like it, and remembering that it's that going back to that who not how, like, okay, I have like a ton of program stuff that I have to do. Like, who can I lean on to support me with that? And but yeah, like you got to be fundraising most of the time. Now, I'm also gonna okay, I'm gonna bring back my farmer tendencies here. Everything also happens in seasons. So
Mm,
like right now, like your donors, they're like planning their vacations. Their kids are also out of school. They are not as plugged in as they were maybe 2 months ago, or they will be in October. So use this season of downtime instead of trying to like hit the pavement and feeling like terrible about yourself because like nobody wants to meet with you. Think about investing in the systems and the workflows and everything that's going to make your life easier come year end. Maybe you like start writing like some of your appeals, maybe start like planning, like use every season has its place and its need for like it has its reason. So
yep.
lean into that.
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to beat up on my ED people. You are my people, but
No,
here's the thing.
you people are
I
like black people.
yeah. But when I hear EDs of small shops say that, I'm like, well, what do you do with your time? If you're not spending 65 to 80% of your time, in my opinion, you're not doing your job. But they'll say things to me like strategy. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. You know what that means? It means you're sitting in your office answering emails because you're afraid to talk to people. That's what that means. So know that.
Yeah.
And just I say like be real with yourself about like, okay, if I'm afraid of talking to donors, there are options. You can talk to Rachel, you can talk to me. Like there are people out in the world who can help you get over that hump so that you can be effective in your job. So with that, Rachel, this has been so fun. I'm going to make sure that your info is in the show notes. Who are your people? If I'm listening to this, I'm like, Rachel, am I the kind of person that you work with? Who are your people?
Yeah. Okay. So my people are small shop executive directors. I do have a membership where you can come hang out. We do some cool stuff. I am also a systems thinker. I am somebody who really believes in the power of your your operational systems, your technology, and having all of that work together so that you can work a lot smarter and more efficiently inside of your small shop. And so that can happen in a few different ways, but at the end of the day, come hang out with me on Instagram or on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. But yeah, small shops, I'm here for you. I want to make your
Oh,
life easier.
yes, girl. I want you to make their lives easier too, because you know what? This is a tough job. So I also just want
Yeah.
to shout out to my folks and all my small shop EDs. Like, I know it feels like we beat up on you a little bit, but we love you. We are you. We want to help you, and
Mhm.
we want you to learn from the mistakes that we all made. So
Yeah.
with
I mean,
that,
that's
Rachel,
the only
yeah,
reason I can say that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I feel like we should make a book of like all the mistakes that we made. That would be a great book.
Oh, that'd be a very long book.
Very
It'd be
long
very
book.
long.
All right, friend. Thank you so much. Always good to see you. I'll make sure your info's in the show notes. Folks, get in touch with Rachel. And if you like this podcast, please like and share on Apple or wherever you get your podcast. It really helps. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.